this deal has been criticized in some quarters and praised in others. I'll do a lot of things today on the program on this deal, but I just wanted to do a quick touch base with the CEO of the Minerals Commission, Martin Kweku. Is in China, right? The whole team is in China. But I thought that with the latest addition to the discussion being provided by former CEO of the Commission, Kofi Anaman, and Fui Chikata, one of Ghana's foremost natural resource lawyers. Indeed, these are the two who've been working on some very high-level work on the African mining vision. And the fact that their article seems to say that the IEA criticism of the deal is a bit offside, essentially in relation to the estimated revenues from lithium and also the vehicle to use for the agreement. Although they do agree that there has to be tightening of the deal in certain quarters. They talk about, for example, improvements should be made to the terms of the transaction, which they then deal with in similar subsequent paragraphs. They talk, for example, that a matter raised by IEA that is worth considering is to do with the development of a policy for lithium mining and value addition, as well as improving the level of information on available resources, which they think is a fair point. But the main thrust of the criticism against the deal, I think there have been three issues: whether Parliament has a role to play before or after, whether Ghana is getting enough. Indeed, the IEA statement that is sent out 28 November say they believe that a contract to exploit Ghana's natural resources, apart from requiring parliamentary ratification according to Article 268, the terms they believe are not good for Ghana. They talk, for example, that the terms of the agreement is not different in principle and substance from any of Ghana's previous colonial type agreement, which over the years have yielded very little to the overall benefit of the average Ghanaian. They also think that it's better to come by JV or service contract. And then they are also aware of an emerging and more improved transactional model adopted by major lithium producers like Mexico, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. And that drawing on this model, the Ghana Lithium Company should be set up, should be commissioned to develop the entire value chain from raw mining lithium to manufacture of batteries and other products in Ghana. This is based on what they call international best practice. And then they also then do some valuation calculations that calculate how much we would raise, about 24 billion. And then they also talk about a smarter way of developing natural resources, drawing attention of the government to the UN Charter on Human Rights, etc., etc., etc. So the article written by Kofi and Fui are quite interesting. It's quite interesting. I also need to point out that there's also an article written by Bryce Simmons, which suggests that the deal should not be approved in this current form. So first, let's find out from the Minerals Commission CEO what he makes of all the views being expressed around this time. So he's joining me from China, Mr. Kweku AEC, Martin Kweku AEC. Good morning.
Morning, Bernard. How are you?
I'm very well, and hope you are well too.
Oh, very well.
What do you make of the debate so far? It's IEA has spoken, Imani through Bryce Simmons has spoken. Now we've heard Kofi Anaman and Fui Chikata also joining the discussion. As a commission, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Bernard. Bernard, let me say this. We have responded to many of the issues. I think last week, the minister and I did some press conference. We answered some of the issues. And then I think I was also on Newsfire over the weekend. I also discussed some of the issues. And I've also done some publications and appeared at other media stations to discuss it. In fact, I love the word offside when you are referencing the beautiful piece by Fui Chikata and Kofi Anaman, who happens to be the first CEO of the Minerals Commission. Mr. Chikata, who for the last 40 years has done a lot of work on natural resource contracts, particularly mining across Africa. Indeed, it was, many of the things are offside. You don't even need a VR or what the one they use, the footballers use to check whether or not the person was actually offside. But let's get more serious. So let me take the items one after the other. The issue of Parliament coming in, whether they have a role to play, they have a role to play big time. And we've said in several releases that that issue they raised is moot. Now, if you look at Article 268 of the Constitution, it says that any transaction or contract that is entered into between the government of Ghana and any other person requires parliamentary ratification. That we know of. It's not lost on us. Again, if you look at even the Minerals and Mining Act, it is also stated there. And then when I keep saying that people don't read the agreement, that's some of the things. So if you look at, I don't know whether you've seen it, but if you look at clause 1E, if you permit me, I'll read. 1E says, the mining lease is subject to ratification by Parliament in accordance with Article 268(1) of the Constitution and Section 54 of Act 703. Upon execution of this mining lease, the minister shall cause a mining lease to be laid in Parliament for ratification. And now this is an express provision in the mining lease itself. So we have referenced the constitutional provision. We have captured the provision in the Act, which also make reference to the Constitution. And it is categorical in the license which minister signed on 19th October that it has to go to Parliament for ratification. So it is in the list there. It is separate. Not even that. There's even a Supreme Court decision. There is some Cupid case which says that any lease that is not ratified in accordance with Article 260 is not enforceable. So the agreement minister has signed by the combined effect of Article 261 of the Constitution, 54 of the Minerals and Mining Act, and even the very clause 1E of this agreement that is being discussed is clear and settled. So that is it. So it will go to Parliament. So that is the first step. And I have been telling people they should go out there and listen to the clip. It's available publicly. The very day minister signed, he made a brief statement. And he was very clear. He said, look, there are some other next steps or other regulatory steps that need to be taken to complete the transaction, which will require, among others, the ratification. That is not even the end. They have to secure environmental permits, so they are currently going through the environmental permitting process. Then they will even have to come back to Minerals Commission for the operating permit, and even we have to issue them a construction permit. So between now and end of the year, up to even the next quarter of next year, we hope to go to the environmental permitting process, get them operating permit, get them construction permit, get the lease ratified. This was stated clearly, brief remarks, after signing the agreement. So it was quite surprising that IEA and other creatives, we welcomed that though, I said that, anybody who doesn't get this in ratified is a bad lawyer. Myself, a lawyer for the past 21 years or so, we knew about it. So we had put it in the Constitution, in the league. So reference to those provisions in those two laws are quoted, the Constitution, the Act, and even the agreement, and also making reference to the Supreme Court case. We knew about it. It's not lost on us. So the impression should not be created that with the signing, the guys are going out there to go and start mining. That's why our response is that this is moot. And the accounts will say, if you permit me, because the minister said it in his brief remark. So that is my answer on the ratification thing. So to repeat, Parliament has a huge role to play. Parliament has a huge role to play, and Minister was very clear on that 19th of October that he will take it to Parliament among other things to be done. So that is
fair enough. Fair enough. I was just pointing that in the history. I wasn't asking that as a question. The article by Kofi Anaman, however, for example, talk of a potential area of improvement where they look at
Yes.
the pricing of the product. And they are recommending, for example, that because the lithium market is very dynamic, government could by itself engage a commodities research company to regularly provide it with prices, both open market and where possible, contract prices between unaffiliated companies for guidance. And they also give another way for government to have a side agreement with a company which will provide for the engagement of an independent and reputable company to provide on a regular basis current data on prices that will be used for the gross revenue determination. So they're saying because the pricing of lithium is a bit unclear and it's not like the pricing of gold or cocoa, government needs to do some things to make sure that the basis of your calculations are correct. And they give two options. Can you tell me that you agree with this and you will implement it?
Bernard, let me tell you this. Without sounding very rude or being disrespectful to anybody, these are the real experts. I mean, when I read the article this morning, it was sent to me. When I read it, I was just dancing all over the place. Okay, we'll come to another point. Maybe I'm sure you read to me when they got their gross revenue of this, their 294 billion. If you remember, on Saturday I was on Newsfire. That was, I think, on the 10th. So the other week before, on the 3rd of December, I even questioned how they arrived at these their billions we were talking about. If you listen to the concluding part of the program, that was on the 3rd December before the Saturday one. So I was very happy that Kofi Anaman was the first year of Minas Commission. A free ticket, as I said, has close to over 40 years experience in natural resources law. One of the finest legal minds we have in this country when it comes to mining law. Very well respected. I couldn't agree more with them.
So you agree? So do you agree with their recommendation?
Yes, I agree with their recommendation, but we don't need to put in the list. So I'm making reference to two things. So for example, in the list, if you read Schedule 2, page 23, we have stated it that they will do a feasibility. And it's not as if we leave something to them, they'll come and tell us this is feasible, it's not feasible. I'm part of that committee. We have other metallurgists and Ghanaian experts, both women and abroad, who have been drafted in. So when they bring their feasibility, which we have given a deadline of not later than February, when it comes, then we'll know that, look, this is the chemical plant that will be established, it will be located here, it will cost so much, this will be the price and all those things. So all those things, Kofi Anaman, Food Secretary, raised, we're going to put them in a separate agreement we're going to sign with them when we review the feasibility report, which we're expecting fairly 2.5 months. So that has been taken note of. We don't need to put it in the lease agreement. So
all right.
I mean, they just made my money.
They also said that there's another, fair enough, they are also suggesting an area where they would like to see tighter language in the mining lease and associated agreements relating to the possibility of establishing a plant to process concentrate from the mine. And they deal with this from Schedule 2 of the lease, which contains provisions requiring the company to undertake a scoping study to evaluate the economic benefits of the downstream conversion of the concentrate in Ghana. Now, as they say, as they understand it, this relates to the possibility of establishing a plant to convert concentrate into lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate. They say that it will do no harm to be more precise about this. In any case, it should be made clearer that the obligation is to make the concentrate available to any Ghanaian plant on terms no less favorable than those on which the mine supplies any other customer, including its shareholder or customer. They say this will be an important step along the path of achieving value addition in the country. Again, is this something you agree to? And can you tell us how you will tighten that provision?
We agree. As I said, it's a beautiful piece. We agree because, one, the Piedmont agreement they are referencing has not been approved yet by government. Okay? Then two, as we said, we are waiting for the feasibility report. So once we look at all these things, we'll put it there. We are aware of it. So they have actually made life easier for us. We agree. That is it, but we don't need to put it in the agreement. So we are waiting for the feasibility, and before Minister approves the Piedmont agreement, which we are looking at, all these things will be put in there, and we'll make it public.
So just to be clear, on relation to the first point that you said you agree, but you don't need to put in the agreement. So are you saying that you will engage a commodities research company to provide regular information on
We have
prices?
already engaged one. We have already engaged. In fact, there are some Ghanaian experts who have brought in from Australia. Australia produces half of the world's lithium, half currently. And then the next,
And they'll be doing precisely what Kofi and Fui are suggesting.
So there are some Ghanaian experts.
Hello?
All these trips. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you say so. You are saying that. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, there's a lot going on there. For example, we are hiring some Ghanaian experts from Australia, Canada, and US to prepare all.
All right.
So the issues they raise are things we are aware of, but our point is that we don't need to put them in agreement. I'm happy they admitted that we can have a separate agreement on that. Yes, so it means they are mindful of that. So once we get a feasibility, we look at the possibility of establishing the chemical plant, how much it costs, location, how much.
All right.
And then before we approve the agreement, we look at all these things and then sign off on it. So we didn't put in agreement because we needed to conclude other things. So they actually made our day and put to rest.
Just my final question. My final question. Yes. You notice that Kofi and if we calculated what we will get, and they used a number of things. So they used the royalty plus the levy, they used the income tax, and then the dividend. All right. Now, will this calculation be correct in the first 10 years? Because I am told that Atlantic is getting a 10-year tax holiday because they will benefit from the Ghana Free Zones regime. So if this is correct, does that mean that the tax component of the calculation will have to change for at least the first 10 years since they'll be getting a tax holiday?
But Bernard, it's a big lie. I'm sorry I have to use that strong language. There's nothing of tax holiday here and there. If we said in the agreement, again, people don't read, that will pay a corporate income tax of 35%. It is in the agreement. So where is this tax holiday thing coming from? They have not even brought us any reports on the chemical plant here, which would be, as I said, it's not as if we've left it for them to go and bring some experts from Chile, Australia, or Canada to come and put link and tell, oh, this is possible, this is not possible. We also have Ghanaian experts who are on the committee. So the likes of Professor Mankwa, who is a metallurgist, the one, for example, working on the kaolin and FESPA, who just Citi to look at the chemical plant when done.
We seem to be struggling, and we apologize. We are talking to him from China. And so I guess his points have been made. The point was to try and get initial reactions to the suggestions in the article, the latest article. But we will take you back into the build-up of this. So please accept our apologies, listeners, for the interview. So let me put this in context. The whole discussion about Ghana's mining agreement with this Australian company, it's premised on two things, right? So the lease agreement between Ghana and Berari DV, and of course there's Berari is like a subsidiary of Atlantic, right? This is happening within the global battery and electronic vehicle value chain. So people are still at COP28. And in fact, all of this discussion is around energy transitions. All right. So basically, we're saying let's move away from dirty fuels to clean fuels as part of a net zero carbon emission as a country. And one of the things that you would need to do is to change the type of energy you use. So they call it energy transition. Now, in many advanced countries, people are moving away from normal, they call them ICE engines, to electronic vehicles. All right. Now, electronic vehicles will typically need certain components. So in the EV supply chain, batteries play a very important role. So whether it's nickel, lithium, or cobalt, the mining of those provide the basis for the creation of those batteries, right? So there are certain metals as well that are smelted, certain things, chemicals produced, all to assemble the cells or the batteries, which then power the electronic vehicles. All right. So the conversation about lithium should be seen from that context. It's the future. About 9% of all vehicles in the world are now EV, and it's going to get bigger. The rate of growth of EV is very high. All right. Second point, some of the so-called critical minerals for this new economy include bauxite, cobalt, copper, graphite, iron ore, lithium, manganese, and vanadium. In Africa, DRC produces about 50% of the world's cobalt. Very important component. Wow. There's also bauxite mining in Guinea. Bauxite also you can smelt for aluminium. Some of the components require aluminium. South Africa is quite key in manganese and vanadium. Ghana, prior to this agreement, was only playing a role in manganese in the value chain that has been described. But lithium is seen as a potential game changer. The real question then becomes, how do you structure the mining agreement to give Ghana the best chance? And I think the basic issue with Ghana and mining has been, Nathan, that in the past we've only focused on the fiscals. So we've had gold mining for many years. Government gets the royalties, gets the revenue from taxes, and doesn't develop the mining value chain. So there are mining services companies that are supposed to be created around mining. So people supply food, people supply welding, all those things. For many years, we've only focused as a country on getting the revenue from the royalty or from the tax. So I think that's the sense from which IE is coming, that look, if you're going to develop the lithium value chain, if you're going to mine or get a company to come and do lithium mining, don't just focus on the revenue side. But even on the revenue, they feel that we're going to get a lot less. All right. Now, this is where the discussion then begins. But there's been a lot of different perspectives. IE have said, for example, they don't like the fact that the deal has not gone through Parliament yet, and they feel like the vehicle being used is not right. So I'm going to get Sky to summarize the main arguments from the various perspectives. Then we will come to the latest article and why that seems to be a game changer. The latest article that was sent this morning by Kofi Anaman and Fuichi Kata seems to have tilted the debate in favor of the government in terms of what is happening. So, Sky, let's just go back. What was the first significant criticism to this? Was it the IEA one?
Yeah, so in no particular order. So the IEA basically issued a statement, which statement was sort of given a voice by a former Chief Justice of the Republic, Sophia Akufo, who is now a fellow at that institute, as I understand it. And the IEA is a leading and a clear voice in spaces like this. So if they speak, we need to give them a hearing. So, for instance, they insist on the necessity of Parliament's ratification for the lithium agreement in order to give it legality in line with Article 268 of Ghana's constitution. And we do know that that provision demands that before agreements like that become effective at law, necessarily Parliament would have to give it a stamp of approval. Otherwise, they will be thrown out by the Supreme Court. And we've seen that in Waterville and other leading.
So it's clear. There's no controversy there.
Exactly. And then they also argue that the agreement resembles past colonial agreements which deal with concessions as opposed to other modes. For instance, they spoke about joint ventures or what do you call it? Service agreements.
Service contract.
Exactly. So they argue that these past colonial agreements were essentially exploitative and offered very limited benefits to Ghanaians. And then they also spoke about modern best practices like joint ventures and service contracts are recommended instead of traditional mining leases.
Yes.
And then they said that Parliament is advised to seek agreements ensuring maximum benefits for Ghana and avoiding those colonial-style leases. And then the IEA also supports mining fiscal regimes that are favorable for national interests as opposed to colonial style,
Yeah.
agreements. And then they also are saying that there is a need for a thorough review of the entire process, so that at least we have a company here in Ghana,
Yeah.
which will be processing the lithium that will be.
They call it the Ghana Lithium Company. So
Exactly.
they even propose a potential, like they're proposing what they should do.
Exactly. So like we had Valco, which was supposed to process aluminium that is
Yeah.
extracted from our mines here in Ghana. They are proposing something in the nature of Valco, which would deal with what is extracted. So those are the 6 key points that I can extract from what IEA
have said.
argues against the deal.
They also did a calculation based on the proposed annual production and said that the final projected value of the product,
In excess of 2 billion.
296 billion.
296 billion, yes.
In fact, the IEA projected a total value of approximately 24 billion. And for the entire 12-year period under the lease, they said that we could get to 296 billion.
Yeah.
This valuation is dealt with. The assumptions for this calculation need to be questioned, which the other article deals with.
Yeah.
But you've summarized IEA nicely. Who else has been speaking on this?
So Bryce Simmons also issued a 30-minute long article on this particular matter. In essence, I would extract 6 main points that are relevant for our purpose. So he argues that the deal is less favorable than Ghana's historical mining agreement. So he was comparing it with traditional agreements that the country has signed in areas of gold and diamond and related, mineral resources, and argues that this particular lithium agreement is less favorable and that it should be taken a second look at. Then he also argues that the agreement lacks a sophisticated legal structuring. In other words, the lawyers and the experts who put it together did not tighten the various provisions in the agreement, and for that matter, they could be exploited to the disadvantage of Ghana. And then also he argues about failure to leverage the full potential of the lithium market. It's one of the things that, for instance, the other article spoke about, that which is the article from Professor Fuichikata and the former.
Yes, so Kofi Anaman, who is a
Kofi,
former, is a
exactly.
founding CEO of the Minerals
Of the
Commission.
Minerals Commission. So you noted that they said that the prices that we see on the international market for lithium, they are not stable like that. They fluctuate.
Yeah.
So Bryce Simmons argues that we have to take full advantage of what exactly happens on the international market, and it appears that the current regime, as defined in the agreement, does not deal with that. And then also the deal's geopolitical implications, especially with foreign entities, are questioned. Again, the question is made as to whether we could use, people like engineers and planners, Ibrahim Mahama, whether Ghanaian expertise could go into the exploitation of these, mineral resources, as opposed to giving it to foreigners who would then come and mine and take the resources or their profits away to the detriment of the national Citi. And then he also called for a reevaluation and renegotiation of the agreement to align better with Ghana's interest instead of the current arrangement, which he says is not beneficial to the Ghanaian people. And then also the importance of effectively leveraging Ghana's lithium resources is also emphasized, which appears to align with the argument around Valco and how it could be better, leverage in terms of lithium mining, so that we have our own version of, mining giant that is in the space of lithium.
All right.
Then all of these things,
I need to mention that whilst you mentioned Valco, don't forget that Charles Mensah, who's head of IEA, has also had some affiliation with Valco. Okay. So I think that some of I'm not necessarily saying that the views being expressed by the fellows of IEI's views, but it's important to point out the work he did at Valco and what kind of knowledge that would give him about agreements for exploiting minerals. That does not necessarily mean that everything they say is right or wrong, but it's just an important point to make that this is the self-same Charles Mensah, formerly of Valco. Do you get the point? Right. But continue the discussion.
And then also, let's also point out that Professor Jampo,
Ransford
Jampo, who is traditionally a political scientist, but also interested in the governance of the mineral space, has also spoken very critically about the agreement.
And also a former IEA person. He used to work at IEA in the past.
Yeah. So he rejected the agreement in its entirety, says that it is not beneficial to the country, and argues that the idea that Parliament will serve as, if you like, the body that would unpack the agreement fully to the benefit of Ghanaians and reject provisions that are not in the interest of Ghanaians, it's a no-no, because in his view, MPs, in his words, can easily be bought. And that to that extent, he does not believe that Parliament can operate as a bulwark to stand in the way of possible exploitation of Ghanaians in this particular matter. So he is saying that no reputable CEO of a state agency that is interested in the welfare of Ghanaians will go on television to discuss and defend this particular agreement in its current form. And is calling for a total rejection of the agreement by Ghanaians, so that Ghana, and for that matter the government and Parliament, can go back and do a better job on it. So today we have a new statement, which statement appears to suggest that, look, there are areas to improve upon in the agreement. This statement came in from Professor Fuichikata, and you want to give us the specifics?
Yes, so let me read some of the highlights. It says, given that, so this Kofi Anaman is a former CEO of the Minerals Commission, and Fuichikata, I mean, I think the thing we did with Cote d'Ivoire,
the 8 laws.
It lost. I think is the main legal brain on the Ghana side behind that.
So just to quickly update, we had a disagreement with La Cote d'Ivoire as to where exactly our maritime boundary should actually sit. You do know that a lot of our mining, crude oil
it's offshore.
Mining operations are offshore. And then the La Cote d'Ivoire people thought that, look, we were eating into their territorial waters and exploiting the black gold from their country. Of course, that matter went into the went before the ITLOS, and ultimately a decision was made in favor of Ghana, essentially. And Professor Fuichikata, together with
Kofi.
Is it?
No. Other people. Yes,
yeah.
I'm
talking about with the former Attorney
Marietta
Briapopong, and then Gloria Kufu played a key role in arguing Ghana's case before ITLOS and ultimately preserving our natural resources in the waters.
So I think the point is that when it comes to natural resource law, and particularly mining, these are the two names, and one tilts to the law, one tilts to the economics. So it's quite an interesting pairing. So I don't know if you have time for me to read the whole thing, but I should read highlights. So maybe I'll read highlights, because it's just 4 pages. It's not that long, honestly, but I don't like to read just like this. So
technical or something.
Yes, I'll jump through. Given the state of governance in our country and the long-held conviction that the country has not had enough benefit from mining, it is understandable that there's suspicion about a significant transaction such as the grant of a lithium mining lease to a subsidiary of an Australian-listed mining company whose significant US shareholder will buy half the product of the mine and send it to its US plant for processing. This is especially so when the first time potentially affected communities and other significant stakeholders learn about the transactions is in a manner which conveys the impression of a fait accompli. The task, however, is to assess the terms of the transaction in clear-headed fashion and determine whether it should be rejected entirely or improved in any particular. After considering 2 areas in which we think improvement should be made to the terms of transaction, we will address 3 widely publicized criticisms which are patently wrong in our view. We will also discuss longer-term measures for improving our knowledge about our lithium and green mineral resources and for developing policy around them. So that's the premise. So now they deal with the 2 areas of improvement, which I asked the Minerals Commission guy, which he agrees with. So maybe let me not read that, but let me just quickly summarize it. So they are basically saying that the first area of improvement is in relation to the pricing of the product. And that, the main product or the beneficiated lithium ore, which they name, the sales price of this is what determines the company's gross revenue. Now, it is on that gross revenue that government royalties and growth and sustainability levy will be calculated. That would be the basis for assessing the company's income tax liability as well. Then he says, they are saying it is clear in the interest of Ghana for the company to obtain the highest prices possible for its products. Now, they then go and talk about the fact that half of the concentrate, which will have a lithium oxide content of 6%, will be sold through an offtake agreement to a U.S. company, Piedmont, which has significant direct and indirect ownership interest in the Ewoyaa project. The other half, having lithium oxide, will be sold to others. Now, this is their proposal. The agreement must require that prices obtained by the company are in line with market prices. And especially in the case of the sale to Piedmont, that prices are at arm's length, which is a term you can explain. Because if there's a relationship between the person buying and the person selling, they can do what is called transfer pricing, which may be lower than the real price. So if I am a radio station and I own an ad agency, I can sell slots on the breakfast show to everybody for 1,000 cedis, but I'll sell it to my own ad agency at 900 cedis. So my ad agency will be benefiting more than others. So what they're saying is that because of all of that, number one, we must ensure that the company gets the right price for what it is producing. And then in the agreement to sell it to the US company, they must use what is called arm's length, which is more like fair and formal, not like because of mother side, father side. I'm trying to explain it in English.
That's why they call for an independent
Exactly.
monitor or something.
So they say, so in developing that, they say, surely the government must insist on seeing the provisions of the offtake agreement. The lithium market is very dynamic, and in the last few months and weeks has been very volatile. Government could by itself, so these are two proposals to deal with the two things I've discussed. Government could by itself engage a commodities research company to regularly provide it with prices, both open market prices and, where possible, contract prices between unaffiliated companies for its guidance. So they need market intelligence. How are the Zimbabwean people buying the Zimbabwean lithium, selling it to their others? How are the Chinese buying it? What are the average prices they are selling? Then we can then use that to know that the company is not understating the price, because the premise of all of this is that the sales price determines the revenue, and the revenue is what determines the royalties and the growth and all that we get. So it's a very important point. They are saying either you get a commodities company to do this, or have a side agreement with a company which will provide for the engagement of an independent and reputable company. So you can say, this is what we signed. What's the name of the company? Whatever.
Atlantic.
Yes, or their local reps, BV. They should have an agreement for a company or to provide them current market prices, which the government can also vet, because they have an interest. Second area of improvement. This is more in relation to the language of the lease, right? Now they're saying that the second area in which they would like to see tighter language in the mining lease and associated agreement is relating to the possibility of establishing a plant to process concentrate from the mine. All right. Now, according to them, Schedule 2 of the mining lease contains provisions requiring the company to undertake a scoping study to evaluate the economic benefits of the downstream conversion of the concentrate in Ghana. Right? I.e., so when we produce the chemical or the mineral, there's part of the agreement that says that they should explore the possibility of setting up a battery company, for example, to produce batteries that will be used in electronic vehicles. It also provides that if the company is unable to establish a chemical plant, the company shall make the concentrate available to any chemical plant established in Ghana. So if the company can establish that Nathan has a battery producing company, they should explore supplying. It's almost like Jubilee oil. They are saying if you produce the crude, instead of selling it to Saudi Arabia or China, give Tema oil refinery or send to the first right of refusal, for example. That's the kind of same thing they're saying, right? Now, as we understand, this relates to the possibility of establishing a plant to convert concentrate into lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate. They are saying it will do no harm to be more precise about this. So they are saying, you are saying, oh, they can do it. Make it law. Give it more, shackle it. Just that. Don't just say, oh, if possible, give it to the local company, or if possible, set it up. They are saying, based on your policy or what you want to do with overall EV space, give it some more grounding. So they say, for example, that it should be made clearer that the obligation is to make the concentrate available to any Ghanaian plant on terms no less favorable than those on which the mine supplies other customers, including its shareholder or customer. This would be an important step along the path of achieving value addition in the country. And this is important because if somebody produces crude, I'm using crude because we know crude, and says, look, I'm going to get a better price from a Chinese off-taker. So there's no way I'm going to give it to Tor because Tor doesn't have the financial depth to pay me now. If the government insists that part of the Jubilee oil field, 30% of the oil must be sent to Tor, and Tor must process it, we'll be having a different conversation today. So what Kofi and Fui are saying is that use that knowledge to make the language around Schedule 2 firmer. Again, the Minerals Commission guy says he agrees. Whether he will change the law, whether he will amend the agreement to reflect that, or whether he will have a side agreement to reflect that, I don't know. Do you understand my point? Or whether Parliament will insist that these two things be incorporated before they agree is possible. Because this is also ventilating the space for Parliament to also now learn that it's possible to tidy the agreement up with these two additions. Be that as it may. The two now deal with Professor Jampo and IEA, which I'm coming to now. So this paragraph 4. The IEA and Professor Jampo of the University of Ghana have effectively made computations of value the country is giving away under the terms of the current mining lease, which, if true, would be scandalous and be a basis for rejecting the agreement. The IEA, backed by former CJ, Ms. Sophia Akufu, has also contended that a JV agreement or a service contract are preferred legal vehicles as opposed to a mining lease or concession, which is what we've done, which they characterize as a colonial form. Unfortunately, there are fundamental flaws in the methods used by the IE and Professor Jampo in computing revenues and the allocation of potential direct monetary benefits from the project, which undermine the conclusions they seek to draw. Very important point. The contention by the IE and Mr. Kufu that, quote, joint venture agreements or service contracts are better than leases or concession contracts suffers from the error of promoting form over substance. You understand this better than I do. They are saying that you can't just elevate a type of agreement over another without looking at the content of the agreement. So basically, they are saying you can have a JV which is bad and a concession which is good. You can have a service contract which is terrible, and you can have what do you call it? A concession or a JV which is better.
IEA spoke about service contracts and joint venture
as better than
concessions in this case,
or leases.
Leases, yeah.
So just to, again, you have the lawyer here, but I'm just using normal English. So when you talk about a mining lease, or a mining lease, basically you have a resource, you bring in a company, it's like you're outsourcing the work to a company, and you come up with some agreement on how they pay you back based on whether you own part of it or not. All right, that's a lease. Now, the term used in the what we've done with Ewoya is called it's a lease agreement. It's a lease agreement, which is like you've given the forest reserve, like you lease land for a period to exploit. I think it's 15 years with the possibility of renewing it. So the lease is like land now. You don't buy land, you lease it. You take it for a period, you use it, and it reverts back to the original owners. All right. So now they're saying that a joint venture is basically you and Nathan coming together with an agreed amount of contribution to be joint owners and joint exploiters of the deal. Or a service contract where we are basically saying we own the company, you are just coming to do the mining for us as a service. Now, IEA thinks that service contract or JV are better in this case than a lease or concession. The two co-authors think that this is neither here nor there. What you need to look at is the substance of the agreements, not the terms. Let's go on. As indicated above, the main product from the project, which would be exported for sale, is spodumene concentrate. The quality of this material is normally measured in the industry terms of the proportion of lithium oxide it contains, rather than in terms of pure lithium metal. This is a very important point. They are saying that it's not the amount of pure lithium you mine that you sell, it's the percentage of the pure lithium that contains spodumene concentrate. All right? Then you go on. The Iwoya feasibility report indicates that the spodumene concentrate to be exported will contain 6% lithium oxide, or 0.06 tons of lithium oxide per ton of spodumene concentrate. Then they go on. So far, for an annual concentrate production of 160,000 tons, even if we were to assume that all the production would be SC6, the lithium oxide content would be 0.16 times 160,000 tons. So that would be 9,600 tons per year. Now, a way of pricing lithium compounds is by reference to lithium carbonate price. So the particular lithium compound in question is converted to its lithium carbonate equivalent in weight and priced accordingly. So they give an example. This is an NSMQ. For lithium oxide, the conversion factor is 2.473, meaning 1 ton of lithium oxide is equivalent to 2.473 tons of lithium carbonate for the purpose of pricing. So for the 160,000 spodumene concentrate with grade 6% lithium oxide, it will be equivalent to the 9,600 times the conversion factor of 2.473, which will be 23,712 tons per annum of lithium carbonate. Now, we haven't finished. If the price of lithium carbonate is $29,000 per ton, then the gross revenue per year would be the 29,000 times the 23,712, or $688 million. So this is how they calculated what we will get. I think you get my point. So let me make it easy for you. They are saying that if you produce 10 kilograms of lithium, only a percentage of that lithium is actually what is required for using that you sell. And so you don't calculate what you are getting by the 10 kilograms of lithium you produce, but by the percentage of the lithium that contains the thing that is the chemical that you use. And based on that calculation, you are getting $688 million, not the 24 billion the IEA calculated. So IEA's calculation
per annum, or it's over the lifetime?
Per annum. And the IEA's per annum, let me go to IEA. IEA's point, Roman 3, based on the projections by Berari DV of an annual production of 160,000 metric tons of raw lithium, which converts by multiple, they use 5.323 into lithium carbonate, and they give the market price $29,000. They used chemanalyst.com. The IEA projects a total annual value of 24 billion. So you get the point. IEA used a multiple converter of 5.323, and they didn't use this calculation of the 0.6, which reduced the conversion factor to 2.4. Do you understand? So IEA says every year we are getting $24 billion. These two men are saying every year we are getting $688 million. That's a huge difference. That's less than $1 billion. Right? So they are saying we get less than $1 billion per year. IEA says we're getting 24 billion. Now, Ghana's GDP is about 80 billion. Bro, so if we are getting 24 billion a year, then the lithium will change everybody's life.
On paper.
Yeah, so
We heard that before.
that's why I feel we need to be a bit slower here, because your entire GDP is $80 billion. So if 1 year of mining lithium will give you $24 billion, that's crazy, right? Now, these guys are saying, no, you are going to get $688 million. All right? Let me continue the article. There is evidently a vast difference between $688 million and $24 billion. The IEA ought to explain how it arrived at its computation of its figures, if its figures and arguments based on them are to be taken seriously. The company itself has indicated that its annual concentrate production is expected to be 350,000 tons. But this does not affect the issue of the method of computing revenues that is under discussion here. Then it comes to Professor Jampo now. Professor Jampo says that the agreement gives about 13% of our lithium proceeds and 87%. Sorry, Professor Jampo says that the agreement gives Ghana about 13% of our lithium proceeds and 87% to foreigners. This is a gross error. For For a company operating under a regime of 10% royalty rate and 1% levy, 35% corporate income tax rate, and 13% government free carried interest in the operating company, the proportionate division of direct monetary benefits is not as Professor Jampo implies. Then they use a hypothetical example, again NSMQ. We can illustrate this, and this one there it's not difficult. This one is very easy. We can illustrate this with a simplified hypothetical example. Take a company with an annual gross revenue of 100 cedis, and operating costs and other allowable deductions amounting to 30 cedis, resulting in taxable income of 70. So this is basic net income. All right, basic accounting. The company's revenue is 100 million. Their operating cost and allowable deduction is 30. So their taxable income is 70. Now, the income tax percentage will be 24%, right? So 24 cedis. So profit is 45.5. Assume that the whole profit is paid out in dividends to shareholders, government and investors. Dividend payments would be 13% because that's our carried interest, which will be 6 cedis, and then 39 to the investors. So if you take what Ghana will get from this 100 example, our income tax is 24 cedis of the 24 cedis because the income tax percentage is about 30 something, which when you apply to the 70 gives you 24. Our royalty is 10%, levy is 1%, so that's 11 cedis. Dividends will be 6 cedis. So if you add our 11 cedis to the 24 to the 6, we will get 41. And the investors will get 39. The two amounts together, totaling 81, can be taken as proxy for the annual direct monetary benefit derived from the project for the government and its investors. And so in this model, simplified for illustrative purposes, government takes 51% of the available direct projected monetary benefit and the investors 49. Now, they say similar comments apply to Professor Jampo's reference to gold mining projects, where he seems to think that the division of benefits is 5% to government and 95% to investors. There, with a regime of 5% royalty and 35% income tax and 10% government free carried interest, using a similar simplified model of 100 cedis annual gross revenue and an operating plus other tax deductible amounts of 30, the direct monetary benefit sharing proportion turns out to be 45 for government and 55 for investors. So they are basically saying that the claim by Jampo that we are getting only 13% and the foreigners get 87% is wrong, based on the way you calculate these things. As for the argument relating to joint ventures and service contracts, making express the implication that they are inherently better than leases makes the error clear. The proposition does not even attempt to engage in a meaningful comparison of financial terms. If, for instance, under terms of a service contract, government pays a contractor 60% of mining revenues and retains 40%, that would be less beneficial than in a concession contract in which the direct monetary benefits are 50-50 and vice versa. I think I made that point. Besides, the terms joint venture and service contract are so broad as to cover such a multiplicity of mechanisms that makes the proposition too vague to be meaningful. In a sense, any legal entity with more than one shareholder can be called a joint venture between the shareholders. Presumably, the fact of some government shareholding in the project vehicle is not in this instance sufficient to characterize it as a joint venture in the minds of the authors of the IEA statement. Would majority shareholding be required, or is shareholding irrelevant or merely insufficient? If insufficient, what else is required? When the IEA and Mr. Kufu propose a service contract, is the underlying proposition that government should risk money in mine development and engage contractors who have no legal rights in what is mined? Or does the term encompass risk service contracts in which the contractor takes the risk of exploration and development and is compensated only if the project is successful, and then in many instances by allocation of product? So they are saying you can't just poo-poo lease and concession and talk up JV and service contract without going to the substance of it. And even with the JV and a service contract, there are certain costs you have to incur. Are you prepared for those costs? Do you know what it fully means in discussing those broad legal terms? Then let's end with their last paragraph, last one. There is one other set of matters raised by the IEA that we think is worthy of consideration, but in relation to which we would like to modify its recommendation. That has to do with the issue of developing policy for lithium mining and value addition, as well as improving the level of information on available resources. This, of course, goes beyond the Woya project. Indeed, we think that it's important to pay attention to implementing such a task not only for lithium, but for other so-called green minerals. In this regard, the example of feasibility studies done in the 70s to establish the extent of bauxite reserves available at Chebi and Yinehin and the viability of an alumina plant on those reserves could provide guidance on the approach to be taken. This would not only improve the country's bargaining position in negotiations with mining companies, it would also make it clearer on which element of the value chain policy should be seeking to focus on and over what time frames. However, we think it's premature to be contemplating the establishment of a Ghana Lithium company. The risk of creating a new entity with its own board of directors, chief executive and secretariat, with its avenue for wasteful and unproductive expenditure, leads us to suggest that the requisite feasibility studies should be carried out under the auspices of existing institutions. The Minerals Commission and the Ghana Geological Service Authority are obvious possibilities. Perhaps the Minerals Income Investment Fund can collaborate and pay for such studies. Our curiosity about the quality of investment decisions being made at the MIIF go beyond the scope of this statement. We simply note our interest in the issue for now. Signed, Kofi Anaman and Fuchikata.
See, Bernard, let me quickly say that. I mean, reading the various statements, it would seem to me that while there are differences in approach, we do have some points of convergence regarding the need for us to renegotiate the terms of the agreement, tighten the provisions in the agreement, and then also explore other ways of doing it, all to ensure that Ghana gets the best possible benefit there is. So while there are differences in terms of views expressed by the IEA, Professor Jampo, Bryce Simmons, and then the latest, write-up from Professor Fuchikata and Kofi Anaman, clearly it seems to me that all of them are talking about the need for us to improve the transaction in a way that benefits all of us. I think that is what we need to take away from the agreement, and then also insist that perhaps the government would have to go back to the drawing board and factor in all these discussions that are going on. Because, Bernard, we have heard before that the coming in of oil was going to change our lives. It was going to change the structure of the economy. It was going to improve the economic viability of various industries, and Ghanaians were going to be better off. Oil has come. We have been mining oil for the past 10 or so years. The question is, have we seen any, visible transformation in the life of the Ghanaian? It would seem to me the answer is no. For so many decades and over 100 years or so, we've mined gold in many parts of this country. You go to the gold mining areas and you see life deteriorating on a daily basis. You don't go to Kobuasi and you come out saying that, this is truly a gold mining community. You compare that to the lives of Johannesburg.
But is that a consequence of the agreement signed, or a consequence of government misusing the revenues?
It's a confluence of both.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That, you see, I get you, but the point you're making about underdevelopment in an extractive economy is a correct point. But the argument today is about whether this particular agreement is a bad agreement, and whether it's bad on the basis of specific things said by IEA and Professor Jampo. Do you understand?
No.
So I'm coming. So the point I'm making is that we can deal with this agreement and the issues raised and improve it. Because what I'm trying to say is that we should not let the fact that we've not benefited from mining mean that if the agreement is good, we should poo-poo it. Do you know what I'm saying? So
you see, the overall point I'm making is, if you look at the Constitution of Ghana, the reason why we mine a mineral resource is to improve the lot of Ghanaians. You understand?
Yes.
And that is why I agree with Dr. Kwesi Ndum when he said years before that if digging up the oil from the belly of the earth will not benefit the Ghanaian, let it stay there. Now, why do we want to mine lithium? We want to mine it because we believe that there's a new direction in which the world is going.
Yeah.
And that we want to tap into this new direction and bring economic dividends to the good people of Ghana.
Okay.
Now, the concerns that are being raised while it is possible for experts to say that some of these concerns are not viable, I am saying that there are points of convergence.
Yes.
And taking these points of convergence, I am saying that we need to factor into the discussion the overall benefit that Ghana deserves out of this.
100%.
And
I agree with you.
And in doing that,
Yeah.
I think that we do not need dismissive attitudes on the part of officials.
I get your point.
Because we've seen that with gold, we've seen that with oil, and now we are seeing bauxite is also part of the issues we are discussing about mining. And then lithium is now on the table. So yes, the government may think that it is doing the best possible deal there is from Ghana, because I'm just reading an article from Chile and how they are also using this joint venture thing that what you call it, IEA and the likes have spoken about. Of course, I respect the expert views of Professor Fuichikata and Mr. Kofi Anaman, but I think that the overriding issue will be whether in the end the Ghanaian people will benefit a lot from this agreement.
And to address that, you see, there are a couple of things. The two men have said, giving you two big proposals to improve the agreement, so which we agree with. The other point is that as a country, we also have to decide what we want to do, which is the last point about policy for mining. Do we want to create local champions? Do we just want to continue just enjoying the fiscal regime? Do we want to give ourselves a chance to improve the capacity of local private players? Do we have the capital to do this? These are questions beyond lithium, which we need to address in a way that will change the story that you have described. For the past 100 years, it has not helped us. All I'm saying is that we've not benefited from mining for a number of reasons. And to deal with that, we must be holistic about it, even governance. All right? How do we use mining revenues? The royalties, what do we do with it? Okay? What's the quality of representation of the boards when we have a shareholding? Do the people who go on the boards, do they go there for us? We must consider all those things. So maybe we can use lithium as a new mineral to enter that discussion and say, let's have a broader and overhaul of our mining policies, right? So that they will align with our new development objectives. Because it seems as if it's just the fiscal regime that we've been thinking about for many years, which has not translated into what other countries have used it to do, transforming economies, building local champions, job creation, stability. So I am happy that we are able to discuss all these views on it, as you said. Let's pick out the best, and the debate must be held in a healthy fashion. And I'm urging Parliament, now they don't have an excuse. They have all the documents, they have everything. They should take their time and read through the thing and then do a good job.
You see, that's where my fear is. That often we defer everything to the Parliament of Ghana, hoping that they will represent the true interests of the good people of Ghana. And serving as a reporter in that house for 20 or so odd years, I can tell you that there have been many occasions that they let us down.
Even with such information around.
Exactly. And
so they won't read it all, or they will take partisan position.
There are so many factors that go into parliamentary decisions. And many of these decisions do not truly represent the true interests of the people of Ghana. Often the things that drive the decisions that are made are not about whether it will improve the lot of Bernard Avle or the lot of Mr. Kuda. It is often a question of what is in the immediate.
What is in it for them?
Yeah, that's right. So, and I say this with a lot of authority. So, I do not think that we should hive off the discussion and put it within the domain of Parliament.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, we have ventilated the space and given them information, so they should use it.
Yes,
because they are the guys who can approve or disapprove. We can't.
They can't
unless we can demonstrate and say it shouldn't happen or it should happen.
Look, let's understand that the true essence of what Parliament does is to represent our interests, because it is our power that they are exercising there. So I believe that, Bernard, I think there needs to be even a what do you call it? How do Americans call
public
it?
forum?
Yes, there should be. They call it town hall meeting. And I think an institution like Citi FM, we could lead that discussion so that we have a broad forum where all the experts who matter will come and distill the agreement.
Fair enough.
And then, Bernard, finally, I think that after so many years of mining around the world, I think we should be able to find Ghanaians across the world in this space who we can bring to this country to sit around the table. And after 10 hours or so in a room, come out and tell us whether indeed what the government intends to do with this agreement is in the true interest of the good
Well,
people.
they haven't come to the table. We have brought them to the table in a sense because we've brought all their views together. So it's the same thing.